and yeah, welcome to the Sunday night modeling stream, or at least it's my Sunday night. I don't know where it is where you are, but welcome to the Sunday night stream. I'm Bryan Bentley. I'm the modeling department head here at CG Spectrum, and today we're going to continue working on this little guy, the Kortex bot from Palindrone Robot Supply by Creature Box. So I've been working on this guy for the last, I think 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And I had a couple people asking, it's like, oh, why is this taking so long? Why is this taking so long? And that's just how long stuff takes. When we look at things online, we look at like a lot of speed sculpts and a lot of time lapses and things like that. And it becomes, it's almost like a false positive about how quickly you can put these things together. I think one of my favorite artists right now is Polygon. So he's doing the Sculptober challenge, and he's sculpting something every day for the month of October, and it's really, really inspiring what he's doing. And I really like that he talks you through the sculpts, and it takes him 4 to 6 weeks to finish. And you're just like, oh god, I'm just not fast enough. Everybody else online is super duper fast, and you know I'm lagging behind, and I should be able to do these time lapses. Don't, right? Because the time lapses, I keep on telling you, they're a marketing tool as much as as an educational tool. So yeah, these things take time, man. It takes time to work through all these things. So without further ado. So my plan today is, I think last session I got this jaw working really well. It looks really nice. I got this leg put in, and so my goal for this stream is I'm gonna get these kind of plates put in here. I want to maybe get the brain put in. That's kind of like the fun piece I've been waiting for. I want to get this part of the arm that's highlighted right now. I want to get that put together, and I want to I don't know if I'll get to tubing or not, and then maybe do some more detailing. So I definitely want to get to these wires in here, but maybe we'll get to some of this type of detailing, which I've kind of already done for the pincer. I did that offline, so I'll show you how I did that today or tonight or whenever it is for you. Okay, so first thing, I think, before I work on this guy, I moved the arm out to kind of make this distance a little bit more like the concept. So I moved this out. So these little bars, need to be reattached, or like they're too short. So I'm gonna switch over to these guys, and excuse me. I'm just going to use the move tool to grab these. So I'm just going to do Control and click, and that will give me, it'll mask out everything else, and it'll mask that polygroup. So I'm going to hold Alt, and let's just line this up here. It's back there. Okay, let's just bring that forward. And actually, what I think I want to do is I'm going to move this forward. And let's, yeah. So that'll let me see. So let's Alt, kind of move this forward, do that backwards. So now I can put this wherever I want. Scale this out. Oh, that's why it's doing that. I have my transpose cloth turned on. So I need to do B, T, transpose, just transpose. I'll get into what transpose cloth is later. There we go. That's the functionality I wanted. Was doing some practice earlier with some of the cloth stuff. It's really cool. Maybe we'll get into some of that today. Maybe we won't. So I'm going to do, click here as well. Just turn off that transparency. This one looks pretty good. Make sure I Control and click here. Yeah, there we go. It's always weird when you switch gears. I was doing some traditional sculpting earlier today, so it takes a little bit for your brain to move back into kind of like technical ZBrush land. So I could split these all out into their own subtools, but this is such a small detail, or this is such a kind of like a tightly packed detail. I don't want so many subtools in here that I won't be able to see what's going on. That up. Just want to make sure that these guys are intersecting both parts. All right, cool. The other thing is I'm noticing this little donut piece is much bigger in the concept now that I'm looking at it. So I'm going to pop over to there, and let's work on that a little bit. So I'm going to hold down Alt and go to this. Yeah, that's going to work. Make this just a bit bigger. I'll move it down here. Yeah, that's feeling better. Like this distance here is looking a little bit better. So let's just make sure that got enough room in here for all three of these guys. Maybe a little bit bigger. Yeah, and I feel like it fills out this arm piece a little bit. Like I feel like the arm piece was a little flimsy looking before without that donut a little bit bigger. Yeah, that looks better. That looks closer to the concept. Okay, cool. Right. So next, I'm gonna go over to our arm piece here. So I think last time I struggled with this thing. I was like, oh man, this thing it wasn't working the way I wanted it to, and I went round and round and round. And I think I kind of just left it at this. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're just like, well, this isn't working. I'll come back to it later. Like I've done that a lot. So let's try to get this working. So what I want to do is I am going to, let's see. I think I'm just going to Dynamesh this whole thing together, and then I will sort out the parts that I want to keep around. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go to Dynamesh, and we'll just see what, I don't think I want any blur. Let's just see what that gives us. That is bad. Let's see. Let's turn off project. Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do, excuse me, is I want these two, this cylinder and this round piece, to be one polygroup. So what I'll do is I'll grab this guy and I'll just hide everything, and I'll just do Control W. So those two will now be one group when I Dynamesh this thing together. So I'm going to need a lot more resolution. So let's do 1024 and Dynamesh. Yeah, so that's pretty clean. That's giving us a pretty clean look here. Okay, so now what I want to try to do is I'm going to try to Z-remesh this back down to something that is that's more usable, because this is like almost 200,000 polygons and it's this tiny little piece right here. So I'm going to do a Z-remesh. And I think by default, what I usually do is I turn adaptive off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn adaptive on. So I went and did a bunch of research, and I looked around and I was like, hey, why is this not working? So what adaptive is doing, and I had totally forgotten about this, what adaptive does is it allows your polygons to become bigger or smaller as they need to. If you don't do this, so let's just try to do this. Let's do maybe 10,000. If I don't do this, it's going to try to keep all my polygons roughly the same size. So I need thinner polygons here to define this curve. So let's see what happens if I just run this without adaptive ZRemesher. And 1 second, let me go move my... I'll be right back. Gotta keep my modem in the window. Yeah, so this is what I was getting before. I was getting like these really, really torn up polygons. So let's see, let's go undo that, and let's turn our adaptive on and see what that gives us. Takes a minute. It's a lot of polygons to squeeze through. And it's looking a little bit better. It's looking a little bit better. So what I'll do is, so let's just go and let's just turn off. Let's see. Let's turn off keep polygroups. So I'll just rebuild these polygroups as I need. Yeah. All right, so that gave us much better topology. So sometimes you just kind of have to roll with it, right? And let's see, did it give us? Maybe it gave us some nice poly loops. It may have given us some nice poly loops. Yeah, doesn't matter. I'll show you how to rebuild this stuff anyway. Okay, so I had to turn off my keep groups to get this thing to build. But now, what if I still want those poly groups here, here, and here? So what I'll do is I will re-slice those and do another Dynamesh. So what I want is this, like here, we can't really tell what's going on, but I kind of want this to be a little bit more flush. So yeah, so what I'll do is I'm going to do my trim curve. And I'm just going to lop off these parts here. I kind of want to keep it as close to what I had before, while still being straight. So there's that. And let me make this a little bit smaller. There's that guy. And we did the bottom. We'll do the bottom as well. Go here. Yep. And then for this one, I'm actually going to, maybe I can, let's see. This one isn't actually too bad. So maybe I can use my Z modeler to get this to work. So let's do BZM, and we're gonna go to, I'm gonna get it real close. I want to see where this poly loop goes. So I'm going to do poly group, and I'm going to do poly loop. Yeah. So we'll see where this goes. So yeah, that gave us a pretty consistent poly loop, but it's a little off here. So I want precision. So what I'm going to do is, let's do this. And this is my main kind of gripe with ZRemesher, is that it just gives you like weird, it does weird things. It does strange things that are sometimes not, sometimes strange things that you don't want it to do. So what we'll do is we'll take, and I'm going to just redraw that cut there. So I'm going to do a trim, make sure I have perspective turned off. And I'm just going to try to remake that cut as best I can. No, if you're gonna do straight up poly modeling, use a tool that is for poly modeling. I see this. I get this question a lot. It's like, oh, there's there's Z modeler now. We don't have to poly model anything anymore. No. You still need to poly model stuff. Like, you still need to know box modeling. You still need to go into Maya, go into Houdini, go into Blender. Those, even Moto, especially Moto, is a great modeler. Those packages are designed to do polygon modeling. If you're going to do box modeling straight up out of the box, you really need to know how to use those softwares. Okay, cool. So I got this nice little scoop here. Okay. And I get that a lot. They're like, oh, why do I need to learn poly modeling? There's ZModeler in there now. It's like, ZModeler is it's a quick fix if you don't want to go all the way out of ZBrush and then all the way back into this, all the way into your modeling package, and then yes, 3D Studio Max. I don't use 3D Studio Max, but I know a lot of people use it still. And that's the other thing that I get a lot is they're like, oh, what's the best software to use? And honestly, the real answer is there is no best software. It's the best software is the software you have in front of you and the software you have available to you. That's the best software. So whatever you're comfortable with using, use that. Like, if you like 3D Studio Max, great, go for it. If you like Maya, great, go for it. If you like Blender, great, go for it. But you do need to know how to use a traditional modeling package. It will do you wonders. Okay, so I got this part put in, and so what I did is I just did a trim curve, which makes that kind of weird wobbly what do you call it, like potato chip surface, and then I just did a clip that will just push it back. So I do that a lot. I'll trim and then I'll clip, I'll trim and then I'll clip. Yeah. So let's see if we can do our Z remesher with keep groups on and see what that gives us. Yeah, there we go. There we go. So I just needed to help it along just a little bit. So now we have these nice clean edges. So now I can start to do half. And we'll just keep having this until the shape kind of starts to fall apart. All right, so I don't really have much more room here to go down any further. So that's kind of my Galaxy character. It does. It looks kind of like Pac-Man or like a shark to me at this point. So now I have less polygons in here. I can start to smooth, I can start to kind of bridge this dent a little bit. So I'm going to go back to my BCB, clay buildup, make that a little bit bigger, and just kind of fill in that gap. So let me turn that off. And this is what the clay buildup brush is really for, is really good for, is kind of filling in areas, so that doesn't dip in so hard anymore there. So this is the other thing that I talk about a lot is especially with a concept like this, right? If you want things to be, and this is one of the things that really bothered me when I was first using ZBrush. I was like, why can I not get like these crazy smooth sculpts that the people that I'm looking at online are doing? And it's because I was starting with too much geometry. Like my geometry was I just had too much and it was lumpy. All right, so like why? So if you want really smooth topology and you want really like a smooth surface, start with as few polygons as you can, and then move upwards. So I'm not liking how thin this is here. So I think I'm gonna extend this a little bit. So BZM, I'm going to use Q mesh for this. Let's see. Polygon. Where's my Q? There's my Q mesh. So I'm going to extend this down just a little bit because this is pretty thick and this has gotten kind of thin just because how many times I had to shave it down. So I'm just going to pull this down just a bit. Yeah, cool. And then the other thing I'll do is I'm going to I'm looking at this kind of like edge here. So what I want is I want to kind of pull this guy in a little bit. So what I'll do, and I want this to be straight, like this is almost straight from here to here. If I pull this in, I'm gonna have this little lip. So I'm gonna get rid of these lines here. So I'm gonna do BZM, and I'm gonna do delete for this action. And I want that to be edge loop complete. And there we go. Yeah. All right. So now what I can do is I can go to my move tool and I can alt click, just like I was doing before, or sorry, control click, and it will mask everything except for that spot. So I can bring this in and then scoot it over. So now I have that nice curve. Maybe it's a little bit too much. Would you start with a low poly and then create details in ZBrush, or start directly in ZBrush and then retopologize in 3D model? The answer is yes. I would do both. I have done both. It depends on, you know, how I'm feeling that day. Is it raining? What the client wants? How much time I have? Do I have materials? Do I already have a sculpt that I'm working off of? So yeah, you can do it either one of those ways. You can start with a low poly model and add your details, or you can start all in ZBrush and then go and retopologize and bring it back in. There is no one true way. And that's kind of the fun stuff about modeling, is like there's so many different avenues to do so many different, you can work kind of in as many different ways as you want. Insert. There we go. All right, cool. So that is worked out. That's pretty nice. But like I said, like this is not final geometry. This is just something so that I can get this part to be more flush, and I can get these poly groups back to being the way they were before. So that is actually nice. So let's see if I can't. Let's do an inset here. Let's see if I can't get a little lip around the edge of this. Inset, polygroup island, yeah. So let's pull this in. Yeah, it's not too bad. And then I can probably Q mesh this in a little bit as well. Yeah, so that just gives me like a little lip around there, so it looks like something like it's like manufactured. Now, the problem, what I have now is if I go to divide this, it's going to fall apart. It's just going to turn into like this big pile of goo. So if I do Control D and I turn this off, like it starts to look like plasticky, right? It doesn't look hard surface anymore. Yeah, that does sound like a lot of fun. So what I want to do is I want to put creases, and this is why the kind of the overall arcing methodology of why when you do a trim or you make new stuff in ZBrush, when you Q mesh or anything like that, it makes these new polygroups because it's trying to fit into like this larger kind of ecosystem of the way ZBrush works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Crease. Actually, I'm going to go to Geometry, which I'm already open. I'm going to go to Crease, and I'm just going to do Crease Polygroup. And I think I've done this before, but it's worth mentioning again. So what it's doing is it's putting a crease between each one of these polygroups. So it's putting a crease here, and it's putting a crease down there. So now when I smooth this out, those edges stay nice and sharp. So that's really nice. And the other thing that I really like about ZBrush 2021, and that's what I'm trying to try to focus on today is ZBrush 2021, is we now have this dynamic subdiv. So I don't have to put these actual subdivisions in here. I can just turn on dynamic subdiv and leave it. And then I can come back and like do whatever I need to do. So let's go back to solo. And so now I have this nice clean piece of geometry that fits more with the concept. Yeah, it's feeling really good. And let's go ahead and run dynamic subdivs on this guy as well. And yeah, that's nice. Cool. I like where this is going. All right, so let's see what I want to do next. Let's work on. I think I want to work on this shoulder piece a little bit, because right now this ball is just kind of jammed onto this guy. And let's see, this and this. Okay, so what I want to do is I kind of want this whole shoulder assembly to kind of be one subtool. So let's do some reorganization here. Let's grab this. Let's go on our arm, and for this guy, I'm just going to do split to parts, and that'll split out each one of these little rods onto its own thing. So split to parts. Cool. So that just split out all these guys into their own little pieces. Okay. So this guy, I'm gonna solo this. So right now this is just a sphere jammed onto another sphere. So actually, let's just go ahead and I'm just gonna dynamesh this all together and see what the ZBrush can give me, since we're on the subject. Yeah. Dynamesh. That's not bad. Maybe a little bit more. 5, 12. Yep, and then I'll zero mesh this as well. Yeah, so that gives me some decent topology. So that's one way to fuse stuff together. Another way is if you want to, let's see, how would I do this? Yeah, no, I think I'm just going to leave it like that. That's fine. Kind of gives it a little bit of an organic feel to it. Like he's like kind of like a little manufactured robot thing. Okay. And I can eventually, like what I think I'll do is I'll put some like little dents and dings on this stuff to make it look not super perfect, because he looks a little beat up. Let's see. All right. So let's do these little cables in here. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do cables. And I kind of wanted to focus on using like I said, the new ZBrush 2021 stuff. So that's going to be the micro poly and the cloth tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the cloth tools to kind of put wires all in through here. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert just a new piece of geometry so I can work with that. So I'm going to do insert. And I'm just going to throw in a Polymesh 3D. And that should give me a Polymesh 3D. I don't want it in there. I want you outside of everything. There you go. Okay. And I'm just going to I'm going to make this a Q mesh. So I'm going to say initialize. Where is my initialize? There it is. Initialize. I want this to be a Q grid. I think I want 4 in the Y resolution, and let's just do Q grid and see what we get. 4 that way, and I don't really want any this way, so I'll just go ahead and do this like this. So I'm going to Z modeler. Let's say I'm going to say delete edge loop complete, and then I'm just going to take my move tool and squeeze this down until these are almost square. Cool. So this is going to end up being my the strip for my my cables. So what I'll do now is I'm going to hold down Alt and move this down to the bottom here, and I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is like I said, I'm going to use this as a template for my cables. So I'm just going to kind of bring this up into here. And so this is starting to get a little bit crowded, so I'm going to come up into my subtools. Let's turn that way. Oops. Tool. Come into my subtools, and I'm going to start turning off the things I don't need. So I don't need the head. I don't need the face. I need the arm. I don't need the claw, the body, and that's all back up. Okay. And I don't need my leg. There should be a leg in there somewhere. Look at my foot. There we go. So just hiding some things. That should be there. Okay. Great. So hold down Alt and click this guy. Okay. And I'm gonna hide my leg. There we go. All right. So now we're back to this guy. So I want the cables to kind of come from this middle part here and then kind of spread out along the inside of here, a lot like it's doing here. So there's just like these two little indicators like this guy and this guy, but I kind of wanted to make it a little bit more fancy. And so the reason I did this as a single strip with only 4 of these guys is because it makes it easy to control. So let me turn on solo. So I can control my in tangent, my out tangent, and where my middle is. There we go. So what I'll do is I'm going to go into move. BMV. I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to start to sculpt it into the shape that I want it. Let's turn it off. So you can see it makes it really, really easy to make bends on a piece of geometry like this. hello, Rushback. How's it going? How's it going? So there's and so my brain is just like kind of like I'm like, oh, there's so many different ways I can do this. What's the best way to do this? So I think the best way that I'm going to do this is let's see. I'm going to how many of these do I want? I think I want like 3 or 4. Yeah. So I'm just gonna move this guy. Keep that looking good. So that's going to be my central one. So what I'll do is I'll come in, and then I'll use my Z modeler, and I'm going to split this thing up into a bunch of different pieces. So I'm going to do B, Z, M, and I want to insert an edge. So there's an edge. That'll be a wire. That'll be a wire. And that'll be a wire. So I have basically like 4 wires here. So what I'll do is I want each one of these to be its own polygroup. So on my face, I'm going to say polygroup. And polyloop. So this guy will be, that guy will be 1. That guy will be 1. Let's do every other one. Okay. Okay, so there are my 3 cables, or my 4 cables. So now what I can do is I can split these up and then move them around. So I'm going to go down to geometry, modify topology. I don't mainly work in ZBrush. I find that for the Rushback99 just asked if I mainly work in ZBrush. I work in whatever is most convenient for the tool for the job at hand. So if it is most convenient for me to work in ZBrush for the job at hand, I will work in ZBrush. If it's more convenient for me to work in Maya, I'll work in Maya. If it's more convenient to me to work in Houdini, I'll do it in Houdini. So whatever tool is best suited for what I need, that's the tool that I use. I'm not like, you know, what's the word? I'm not tethered to any one solution, because there is no one perfect solution. Everything does things a little bit differently. So for these streams, yeah, I use Houdini for modeling all the time. I love Houdini for modeling, especially for like hard surface stuff. I may even do some of the modeling on this guy, like this little radiator tube here, and definitely I'm going to do these little guys that come off of the brain and attach to the dome. Paint 3D is the perfect program. I really hope you're being sarcastic. So these little wires that come off the dome, I'm definitely going to go do those in Houdini. So stay tuned for that in the maybe next week or the week after. Okay, so I want to split this up into individual wires. So there is, let's see, where is it? Unweld polygroup border. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to look like it didn't do anything until I go and I start using my move topological. Or the other thing I'll do is actually, because I like BMV, I like my move tool, I'm going to come over to my brush palette, and I'm going to turn on auto masking. And I'm going to turn on Mask by Polygroup. So what Mask by Polygroup does is the first polygroup that my brush hits, that's the one that it's gonna drag around. So this one now, it's grabbing those 2 polygroups, and I can grab these 2 polygroups and move them up or down. All right, if I want to separate this out even more, I can do an auto group. And so now it split each one of those into their own mini polygroup. All right. So now what I can do is I can move these around wherever I want. Yeah, getting used to the node system is pretty difficult. But once you start to learn the library, and it's just like anything else, like once you learn the library, once you learn the methodology behind it, things become much easier, and they make a lot more sense. And that's one of the things I really like about just Houdini in general, is that it has an overarching philosophy. And it like, it doesn't matter what system it's using, what system it's looking at. It's still, like, whether you're doing dynamics or modeling or character work, it has kind of like the same idea. It's using the same ideas over and over and over again. So it's not like Maya or Max, where it kind of feels like, sometimes it feels like it's kind of cobbled together from a bunch of different stuff. It feels very cohesive overall. And so, once again, what I'm doing here is I'm working really, really at a really low poly, right? Like, we always get caught up that, like, Zbrush can do, like, these bonkers, like, you know, million poly sculpts, like 100,000, you know, all this stuff. But when you want control, oh yes, I know a lot of people who were very sad when Softimage died. When you want control, you want to use less pieces. You want to use less faces when you want control. Let's go into our arm, and let's actually, what I want to do is I'm going to actually hide some more stuff, because it's really getting in the way. So that's that arm, right? Arm here. Let's hide this donut, because that's really getting in my way. There we go. So I can kind of pull this stuff down. Cool. All right. So now that we have these pieces, so now we can start to we can turn these into cables. There we go. So we turn these into cables. So what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to solo this, is I'm actually going to kind of smooth these out a little bit. And this is the other thing that people like, kind of like, oh, this is taking so long. Why is this taking so long? That's computer graphics. You're going to be doing this a lot, like like just back and forth and back and forth. Like, once again, I keep harping on it, but like, you don't let the time lapses that you see online fool you. Like, this stuff does not, it's not magic. It doesn't happen automatically. Like, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. And the guys that you do see that do this live, like, you know, like the Joseph Drunces and the Michael Pavloviches, these guys, they do this stuff every day, all day long. Like, that's their job, is to make it look easy, and they do a really good job at it. So if you feel like it's like, oh man, this is going really slow, just, you know, enjoy the process. Enjoy the process is the best thing. Oh, cool. Look forward to seeing you. We'll be doing some box modeling a character, bread and butter box modeling. Still one of my favorite things to do. All right. Okay, so now what I can do is there's a couple different ways I can make these cables, and I think my favorite way right now is I'm going to make a polygroup. I'm going to make 2 polygroups for each of these things. And what I'll do is I'll put a curve down the middle of each one. Actually, do I want to do that? I don't want to do this. Let's try this with let's try it with the dynamic subdiv. I said I was going to use dynamic subdiv a lot today. It's new to me and it scares me. Yes, box modeling. Total box modeling. Yeah, I have seen this Stardust series. That is crazy. Those guys are like, I can't believe they pulled all that off. I think it's just like 3 of them. So it's pretty cool. So I'm going to do my geometry, and I'm going to do dynamic subdiv, but I'm not going to use the dynamic subdiv. I'm going to use the micropoly, like the new micropoly. So I'm going to say dynamic, and they get super tiny, and I don't want that, so I want that. So I'm going to turn micropoly on, and it tells you to pick a micropoly. So I'm going to pick, let's do, what does this do? So what this is doing is it's replacing each one of those polygons with a micropoly. So I need to find, that's not too bad. But the thing is it's stretching these out, right? So maybe I can do a scale. Yeah, I can scale that down. I think maybe I scaled it down too much. Yeah, there we go. So now we have these tubes, these nice tubes. Oh yeah, and you can rotate them in X. Well, rotating in X doesn't really do anything. Rotating in Y, or rotating in Z. So if you have something that's misaligned, so for example, like here, I had, where was that other thing that I used? This guy, right? If I wanted those as like brackets, I could say rotate Z. And I could take my scale. I could do that. Right. But I don't want that. I want these little tubes here. And oh yeah, it's, so we're talking about the Astartes series on YouTube. So it's like like Warhammer fan animation, and what we're saying is somebody was saying that it's like, I was like, oh, it's one guy that did the entire thing. I was like, yeah, it's one guy that did the entire thing, but like, does he have a job? Like, does he, like, what's his story? You really don't know what anyone's story is, right? So it's really hard to compare yourself to other people. And you shouldn't compare yourself to other people. The only person you should compare yourself to is yourself. Like, are you getting better? And yeah, that's the main thing. That's kind of like my motivational speech for the day. Okay, so the thing with this is I can turn this on and off. So those tubes are still there. So if I want, I can still come in with my move tool and I can still keep editing this to make this look however I want. Right, so I'm liking where what this is looking like. It just adds a little bit of just a little bit of visual kind of interest in here. So I want to bake this in, and I'm going to keep working with these tubes. So to bake it in, I'm just going to do apply. So I'm going to click apply. Did I turn on weld? Yeah, weld's on. So I'm going to do, I'm going to say apply. And so now this is actual geometry, right? So now these are all actual tubes. It's not that preview anymore. So I can move these around and do whatever I need to them. So what I'm going to do is I want these to be a little bit thicker, and I also want to get back that functionality where I can move each one individually. So what I'll do is I'm going to go back to polygroups, and I'm going to do auto group. So that'll put each one back into its own kind of section. And then I'm also going to go to deformation, and I'm going to do an inflate. So I'm just going to make these a little bit bigger. So now my auto groups still works. And the other thing I'm going to do, let's make this a little bigger so I can get a little bit more control. There we go. So I want to make pretty big sweeping movements on these guys. yeah, so this just adds a little bit of visual interest into kind of like these gaps. Maybe I'll have it come from a couple different places instead of just that one kind of junction. I want these to like look like they're hanging just a little bit. So some of these are getting a little oblong shaped. I want to keep them looking like actual wires. So what I can do is, so especially like this one is getting a little pinched. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run a quick relax on these, and it's just going to kind of try to even out all those spots. Yeah, that's a little bit too much. All right. So I'll pull this stuff back. Let's turn off Polygroup. Let's pull all this back. So it still intersects there. I might even run an actual divide on this. Yeah, so there we go. BMV. I'm going to turn my polygroups back on and keep working with this. So let's come down here like that. The other thing I can do is if I want more of these, like if I want a little bit more visual interest, I can go to my move tool, hold down Control, click, and then if I hold down, I think it's Control again, I can, yeah. So if I hold down Control, I can move and make a duplicate of these. So yeah, I actually like that. I like that one being right there. And then so I can go back and I can do auto groups again. And I can get back to what I had before. So I'm going to divide these. Yeah, just to get a little bit of extra work out of them. There we go. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to divide. I'm going to use that dynamic subdiv. Where's my dynamic subdiv? Refrigerator blindness. Dynamic subdiv. I'm going to turn that on. And make sure my micropoly is turned off. Is box modeling created by using the box poly model? Box modeling is it's a general term for a way of modeling. You generally start with a box. You generally wouldn't do that in ZBrush. ZBrush is more of a sculpting package. You'll either start with a single polygon or a box or something, and then you extrude and cut and move until you make your model. It's, in my opinion, it's still the most efficient way to model pretty much anything. Like the stuff with like ZBrush and things like that is great, but you just like with box modeling is you have the most control over what you're creating. So many times in ZBrush, I find myself fighting ZBrush. Like I'm like trying to fight it to get it to do what I want it to do. With box modeling, you don't have to do that because you're in total control of your model. Like nothing is being generated for you. Okay, so let's continue on. Let's do some variation. What I want to do is I'm gonna make some of these thinner and some of these thicker because I feel like they're all kind of boringly the same thickness. So I'm gonna say, show me this one. Actually, I'll show. Yeah, that one, that one. Yeah, so I'll make these thinner. So I'm gonna deflate these with my deformation. I'm gonna deflate these, so pull these in a little bit. Maybe not that much. And then, well, yeah. So got some thin ones, got some thick ones. Like this, like where this is going. Okay. So that's one way to do cables because I want some more cables to come out of here and into that shoulder piece. So let's bring back the body. And I'll show you a different way to do it. So this is kind of like the new hotness with the micro poly and stuff. I'll show you the old school way to do it with the curve mesh. So let's bring back our body. It looks like my body got moved. Looks like my body got moved. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Let's see. Let's turn on everything and see what got moved. No, that's my backup. Something got moved, guys. Ugh. Hate it when this happens in ZBrush. Talking and typing always does the same thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let's do this. I'm going to Frankenstein some stuff back together. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes things break. So I didn't touch anything except for this piece and my cables. So I'm actually, what I'm going to do, I'll export my cables and I'll export my arm piece. And I'll bring those back in. So I'm going to do export. Call this cables OBJ. And yeah, so I'll export this as well. OBJ. Cool. So I'm gonna reopen that clean version I had. So I'm gonna do File, Open, no, Kortex. Okay. So we're back here. So this is my clean version of my model. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this guy and I'm just going to bring that. So I'm going to say import and arm. Bring that back in. Yeah, there we go. So that gives me all that back. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say, I'm going to make a new. So I'm going to say append sphere. And I'm just going to do an import. I'm going to import those cables back in. There we go. All right. So we're basically back to where we were before. I'll have to readjust the two these guys, but we're basically back to what we had before. All right. Now, let's see. little bit more. I think that's why there was something wrong, going weird the way I was doing that before. But this looks better. What kind of model is the hardest in my mind to create? So I would say technically, humans, like trying to make photoreal human is like the gold standard of difficulty. And you can see like not even these giant movie houses, the giant visual effects houses have gotten it quite right yet. They've gotten close. Alita has gotten close. Rachel from the latest Blade Runner 49 was very, very close. But it's still not there. Like that's the gold standard. To get to the other side of the uncanny valley is very, very difficult. Mostly because we look at we're human beings. We look at other people literally from the day we're born to the day we die. So we know very acutely what a person looks like, and we're very attuned to seeing what isn't quite right. So that's probably the hardest thing to make. Is especially like a very attractive human is very, very hard to create. What's I gonna do? So I'm just gonna relax these out in their middle. There we go. And then I'll inflate middles as well. Ooh, I like that. We got like a little shoestring action going on. Oh, I like that a lot. I like that variation along the length. Cool. All right. So that's the cables. It would probably be cheaper to actually clone the person, but there's a whole level of ethics in there that we would have to deal with. So, okay, old school way of doing cables. So I'm gonna do cables that go from kind of like here into here. So I'm gonna start the same way. I'm going to start with so I'm gonna append a subtool to append. I'm gonna do star. Doesn't really matter what it is, because I'm going to have some tea because it's very late where I am. First of all, there we go. All right, so I'm going to initialize this to that Q grid one more time, and let's make sure we're on the star. And we're going to do 4 in Y, 1 in X. It depends. It depends on where you are. Some places have the modelers also texture. So in a lot of game studios, the modelers will also texture. In visual effects and animation, those are usually two different disciplines. So I'll do select rect, and the secret to this one is I need one polygroup on one side and one polygroup on the other side, and this will become apparent in a second. So I'm basically going to do the exact same thing as I did before. I'll take this, I'm going to move it up. Tuck this in right into this kind of area here. So I'm basically trying to get like these little guys in here. And yeah, so I'll grab that. And I think I kind of want this. I'll make this flat, like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same kind of sculpting again. So I will take and I'm going to make this pretty thin, like that. And I'm going to go back to my move tool, BMV, BMV. I'm going to make sure I turn off my polygroups now. So now I can kind of pull this around. So I want this little kind of like hangy bit in the middle. Okay, so that's that. So that's basically the where my wire is going to go. So right there. So now what I can do is so what I can use my I can use a curve brush, and I can take and I can run a curve right down the middle of this where this polygroup is. This stream is going to go till midnight, so about another hour. Well, midnight my time, so it'll be about another hour. So, so let's put this into place. Now, the disadvantage to this technique is that it's not as flexible as the dynamic subdiv technique that we used earlier, but it takes less steps. So that's generally the trade-off. If something is a little bit is more complex, you usually get more flexibility out of it. If something is simple, you usually don't get as much flexibility out of it. All right, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to go to stroke, and I'm going to say curve functions, and I'm going to say frame mesh. So I don't need my borders and I don't want creased edges. I just want my polygroups. So I'm going to click frame mesh. Boom. And so that put a curve. I know it's kind of hard to see. Put a curve right down the center of this guy here. So if I solo this, you can kind of see there's a curve like right there. So now what I can do is I can come into my curve insert meshes. So I can do B, C, oh no, sorry, B, I, and IMM curve. So let's grab this wire. I'll click that, and so boom, there's my wire. So now it's too big right now. So what I'll do is I'll undo that, and I'll be off of this guy, and I'm gonna take and I'm gonna make my draw size pretty small, and click that. So now I have these wires that go along that edge, and they follow that edge. So I kind of have to guess how big I want these things to be. Yeah, you could consider this hard surface modeling. Like, this is kind of like mechanical modeling. So let's find, I want more wires than that. Here we go. This one has 4 wires. Boom. Yeah, there we go. I like that. So one thing I do want to make sure is I want to make sure these things are welded together. So I'm going to go to my brush settings. And in my, I think it's in my curve. Oh, no, it's in stroke. Sorry, it's in stroke. I always forget where these things are. Stroke, curve, curve functions, curve modifiers. Lock in as line. I just forget where this is. There's a weld function. There it is. Curve, modifiers, try points. I don't know why this stuff isn't up in stroke because it's kind of scattered all over the place. I want this to weld. So I want those edges, these guys, to weld together. Okay. So now I have these curves that I can do whatever I want with, just like I did before, like I had before. So when you make this curve brush, if I click away from this, that curve will go away. So that's fine. But I want to split this out. So I'm going to do subtool, and I'll do split masked points. So you can see that guy turns gray because he's off in his own little thing. So I can turn that off. Great. So now I'm pretty much where I was before. I have these pieces of geometry that I can mess around with. So I don't want these little brackets on here. I don't really need those. I really just need the tubes. So what I'm going to do is I'll do, once again, do our handy dandy auto groups. And I'll hide my tubes. And then I'll split those off. So I'll say split hidden. So now I have my brackets and my tubes. And I don't think I'm going to need my brackets, so I'm just going to delete those. Oops. All right. So now I have these cables. Now they're all lined up, but I can do pretty much the same thing as I did before. So if I come over to my move tool, so BMV, and I turn my auto masking back on. Now I can take and I can move these wherever I like. So let's make a bigger brush. So this is actually kind of cool. It's kind of starting to look like pseudo muscle fiber or something like that. Even though it's a robot, you can still kind of get like some sort of organicness into it. I think I want most of these to come out of this ball here. Pull these in. I can just keep on pulling them in until they hit the ball. Now, on some of these, so these have like kind of like yeah, you can get away with a lot. Like the further something is from a human being, I found the further something is from a person, the more you can get away with. So if something looks really, really close to a person, you can't really get away with a lot. Like if you're trying to make a digital person, like it has to be perfect. If you're making like an alien or something, you can get away with a fair bit. That's why you see like a lot of CG aliens and these big robots and stuff, is because our brain subconsciously will accept that stuff more because it's not real. So it's like, oh, it's a dragon. Okay, I don't know. Dragons aren't real. I don't know what a dragon should look like, so I'll accept that that's what a dragon should look like. Okay, so these are really, really thin. So I want to make these a little bit bigger. I'm going to do the same thing as before. So what I'm going to do is actually, I want to mask my ends. So I'm going to go to masking, and I want to mask my border. I'm going to do mask by feature. So it masks those border. And then I'm going to relax everything and bloat it up again. So we'll say deformation, relax, okay, and then I can inflate. I think I want this one to come up to the top. I'll do the same thing. I kind of want this one to be some bigger ones and some smaller ones, just to get some variation. So yeah, so now we just have a little bit of that kind of like visual kind of noise that we have in here. And so I'll continue to adjust these offline overall. Yeah, so that's cables and such. Let me save this. Kortex 4. Okay, so I think the next thing I'm gonna work on is I might not end up using this stuff, but there is a interesting functionality in Zbrush called Mesh Fusion, and this is actually really, really cool. I actually thought this was really neat. So Mesh Fusion it works with insert mesh. It works with your insert mesh brush, and what it'll do is it'll take any border and try to fuse it with another border, which is crazy. So what I'm going to do, I'll just demonstrate it now. So if I take and I do BI and I do an insert mesh, so this insert mesh H, that stands for hole. So if I wanted to make like an inset into this, what I can do, and I may or might not use this in the main one. I'm going to do BZM, and I'm actually going to delete this cap. So I'm going to say delete on my edges. Yeah, I'm going to say delete polygroup island. So bang, just get rid of that whole guy. And then I'm going to merge this. I'm going to fill this hole. So I'm going to go to my edge, and I'm going to say close. And let's see, convex hole. I want that to be flat. Cool. Actually, let me go back. Ah, no, too far. Alright, I'm going to fill this, so we'll just say Okay, so I'm going to fill that. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take and I'm going to do an inset. So inset, polygroup island. I'm going to pull this in just a bit, like that. Okay, so I have this edge and I have this inner loop. So So being honest, just think of all the new artists, having them before those companies and start looking at aliens and dragons. Yeah, that's actually, you know what? That's a really interesting thing you bring up. Bear in mind, it's interesting. Like companies really want practical modeling knowledge. Oddly, so if you can make a super hyper photoreal like Campbell soup can or traffic cone or hammer or some things that are like super boring, but if you can make it really believable, not stylized, not fantastical, that's actually what companies are looking for, right? Because as especially if you're and I would assume you're coming at this from like kind of like the place of like a junior artist. You're trying to get a job as a junior artist. That's the type of stuff that you'll be working on as a junior artist. You'll be working on background props, set dressing, things like that. So companies want to know that you can build that stuff and you can build it efficiently and quickly, and what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, reliably. So it's nice to have like dragons and aliens and spaceships and stuff in your portfolio, but after a while, you know, just every now and again, just take a step back and model something super mundane, like a screwdriver or a fire hydrant or a building or the like a hubcap, something that is very complex but very boring. Like pick up like a Windex bottle, like any kind of widget you have in your house, all that stuff, like that type of hard surface stuff. Companies really want to see that type of thing, and they want to know that you can model something that is actually believable and actually in the real world, especially in the area of visual effects. So inserts. I'm going to do insert H, B, insert H, and I'm going to do. Let's try this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this thing out like that. And so what it'll do is it'll mask off everything. So what I can do is I can move this guy around so I can position it however I want. So I want it like this. And then if I then clear my mask, so control and swipe, and then immediately control and swipe again, it'll fuse those two pieces together. So you can see it made this crazy spider web to try to get from here to here, which is really cool. So if I want to do that the opposite direction, so if I wanted that kind of pill piece to go inwards, I hold down Alt and pull it inwards like that. So I have like this inward chunk. And actually, that's pretty cool. I actually kind of like that. I might end up keeping that. So that's a really nice way to add some like detail to your models, is with this mesh fusion stuff. Actually, I really like that. That turned out way better than I thought it was going to. So yeah, you can use anything that has an open hole in it, you can do that with. So we can possibly make our own. Let's go back and let's try to make our own. So let's go to. I'm just gonna save. I already saved this. So I'm just gonna go back to. I'm gonna go to here. I'm gonna go to just an empty subtool, basically. And I'm going to do BI. Let's see. I'm going to make this a Q plane. Initialize Q grid. So I'm going to make my own kind of insert mesh from another mesh. See if this actually works. So I'm going to do BI, and I think it's let's try machine parts maybe. Those might be a little bit too high poly. You feel a bit too high poly. So BI model kit. Let's try one of these. So let's just pull this out. Oh yeah, that'll work. That'll work fine. Okay, so this doesn't have a hole in it. So what I want to do is I want to make a hole for this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split my, say, split mast. And I don't need that plane. That was just to draw that out. So I'm going to delete that. Okay, so now I'm back to here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of try to line this up like that. Okay, and then the next thing I need to do is I want to put this, I want to unify this, right? So unifying puts this thing into a nice zero, basically 0 to 2 space that, not Houdini, Zbrush really likes. So I'm going to go to deform and unify. So it just kind of centered it up. So now I just want to get rid of this back plate. So grab all that, Control W, click it again, and then say delete hidden. Let's do geometry. Modify topology. And delete hidden. Okay, so now I want to make a brush out of this. So I'm going to square it up like that, looking straight forward. And I'm going to go to my brushes. So I'm going to press B, and I'm going to say, yeah, here we go. So I'm going to press B, create insert mesh. Bang. And I want to make a new one. So now I have this new insert mesh that's made from this guy. So if we want to test this, I'm just going to initialize this to that Q mesh again. Q grid. I'll divide this. Divide this and geometry delete lower. So I'm going to grab this middle part, W. And so I'm going to grab, I have my polymesh, so I'm going to grab this, pull it out. And then just like I did before, I can do Control, swipe, swipe. And then it fused everything together. Really, really nice. Now, I'm trying to go from something that's really, really high poly to something that's really low poly. So I'd probably want more edges in here. Actually, that's a good question. In the World of Warcraft movie, I wasn't a modeler. I was a creature dev person. So I did all the, I did the character rigs for the Laughing Skull clan and a lot of the horses in the movie. So that was like a lot of work. I had to rig like 30 characters, and they all had like their own different kind of like dangly things and stuff. So that's the other thing I did. I did character rigging and simulation modeling and simulation. That's what I did on the World of Warcraft movie. So that was fun. Okay, so let's go back to what we had before. Let's see. This guy, yeah. So now that we have this insert mesh, we can use it here as well. So let's drag that out. I love that it gives you the chance to position it before you do this kind of final bit. Make it maybe a little bit smaller. And maybe a little bit off axis. Okay, so I can swipe, swipe, boom. Fused all that stuff together very nicely. So that's really nice. I really like that. I really like the look of that. And it's all one cohesive piece. Cool. So if I look, I think, let's see, what's solo? Yeah, so I'll have to do the same thing to the other side because he's not centered. So I'll do the same thing here, drag this out. And then I can squish this in a little bit. Make sure it's in the center. Drag, drag. So now those are all cohesive pieces. So once again, not final geometry, but it starts to add a little bit of visual interest to these parts. Was the biggest movie I worked on? The biggest movie I worked on was, well, I'll tell you the most fun movie I worked on was Pacific Rim. That was a real pleasure to work on. It was a great movie. I really enjoyed working on that. So in that film, I did the armature. So I was also a creature developer for that film. I did the rig for Chernobog Alpha, the Russian robot. So that was super fun. And so I think I'm going to leave that detailing off for just a little bit longer because I want to get this part in and then I want to do like my high level detailing overall. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to fix this up as well. So let's go back because that got busted when something went wrong with my something got moved when I moved something when I was doing my first round of cables. Thanks. All right, so let's go ahead and split these back apart, and we'll reposition these with the cables. And that should almost take us to the end of tonight's session. Really happy with the way these cables turned out. Like, they turned out really well. All right, what was I going to do? Oh, yeah. Let's split these apart. Split the parts. There we go. Hide that head. And sometimes you just it is very hard. Like it's very hard to do this type of stuff and talk. So sometimes I just have to go quiet and actually just get the thing done. While you're watching the movie, do you sometimes analyze what you've done or just shut? I tend to like. I used to do that a lot. I would look at, like, I was like, oh, what did I do? Like, how could I have done that better? Blah blah blah. Now, moreover, I kind of just sit back and watch the movie. Yeah, that's the whole point of going to them, is you wanted to escape. Like, and for a while, I kind of stopped going to movies because it just felt like I was going to work. So it can be difficult when your hobby is also your passion. So, be careful of that. Yeah. Yeah, the arm section turned out quite nicely today. Very nice today. And I think that's the original strip that's just left over, so we'll delete that. All right, so that's our cables. So we went over cables, we went over insert meshes. The cables took most of the time. I will show you some other stuff with. Apparently this is just the cable generation episode. I did play around with some of the dynamic stuff for cable generation. So we can look at that stuff. So once again, I'm going to start super simply, initialize into a Q grid. Let's do 10. So how the new dynamics works in Zbrush, it's a lot like the other stuff in Zbrush. It only works on what it can see, and it works on the floor. Now, here's one thing that really annoys me about ZBrush is this floor. So if I take this object and I move it up, and then I go like that, my floor by default will follow. So if I go to draw and I go to floor, and I set the elevation to -1. -1 is the default elevation. So wherever my object is, that's where the floor is going to follow me around. The problem with this is dynamics is looking at the floor. It's looking at the floor. It's looking at the floor for collision. So if I run my dynamics, this thing should fall and just crumple onto the floor. So I have my dynamics open. If I do run simulation, yeah, it'll just fall and crumple onto the floor like that. So I don't want that. I want this thing to actually fall down to the actual floor. So I'm going to go to draw, and I'm going to do, instead of elevation of -1, I'm going to put it at 0. So that will put it actually at world 0. Okay, so now if I press run simulation, it falls and does that. Okay. So now what I can do is I can take this little strip, turn to the side, bigger. And so whatever is masked by default will not, won't simulate. So if I mask these two edges and I press run simulation, it falls like that. So if I want a bunch of these, like if I want to make a bunch of cables and I all want them strung between two kind of like two walls, like if I'm going to make like telephone cables or something, I can do kind of what I did before. Right, but now I don't have to sculpt anything. So what I'll do is I'm going to go BZM for my Z modeler, Z, BZM, and I'm just going to delete that middle one. So I'm going to say delete and edge loop complete. So I just have this guy, and I'm going to go to my move tool, and I'm just going to make a bunch of copies of this thing. So I'm just going to hold down Control. right? So there are all these copies. I'm going to mask those edges. And so now when I press run simulation, they all just kind of fall. So let's mask whole end. Yeah, like that. So we have all these pieces that are all kind of simmed into place. And if I wanted to, I could have like, you can have colliders, you can have whatever. The interesting about this is when you start to combine it with that, with your dynamic subdivision. So if I go to geometry and I go to dynamic subdivision and I turn that on, they all get really thin. And then I turn on micropoly. And I'm going to go grab, like, I think they have like a rope in here or something like that. Yeah. Wire. So now I have that, which is really cool. And once again, this stuff is all, this isn't actual geometry, right? It's fake geometry. So if I were to, let's turn this off. Let's undo that. Turn this back on. I'll let this run. So now we're getting pseudo dynamics out of Zbrush. So let's do, let's turn on self collision. Let's see what that gives us. Yeah, so now they're all trying to get away from each other. So if you had something that had like a bunch of cables that you needed to put behind it or something like that, you could use this system. So that's actually pretty cool. The fact that you can do this that quickly is pretty rad. Simulation iterations is basically how fast the simulation is. So the slower your simulation, the slower the simulation, the less accurate it's going to be. So I had it turned up to like 1,000, but. So that's some of the new claw stuff in ZBrush 2021. There's also, and once again, like I can turn this on and off. This is just strips, right? So geometry is geometry inside of ZBrush. So there are also some cloth brushes that you can use. So if you do BC, like it has cloth nudge, cloth move. So if I do cloth move, like this will try to, if I start to pull this up, like it'll try to maintain its length overall. So it has some pretty cool applications for doing traditional cloth, as you would think of like something like a Marvelous Designer or a in cloth or something like that. I don't think it's at that level yet. I mean, I don't know if that's what they want to do with it, but it's pretty cool. I mean, you can, like, the fact that I can build this very quickly and then just like let it sim again and just like let it hit and fall. It's pretty cool. Like I think it's a cool addition. I don't think it's the end all and be all. People are like, oh, it's gonna, replace cloth simulation and blah blah blah. We're gonna be able to do all our clothing in ZBrush. I don't think it's gonna be that. But for stuff like this, for like generating like really quick bundles of cable, like I think it's really nice. Like this looks really, really natural. Especially if I turn off the wireframe and so something like that. And then once again, like this is still just geometry. Like I can still run deformations on this. I can do a relax. That's relaxing too much. And that actually might be relaxing the let's do a smooth instead of a relax. But yeah, so that's the type of stuff. You can do cables, you can do all sorts of crazy things with this. Yeah, I do not comprehend. That's fine. That's fine. These live streams are just to show you what's possible and what you can do. And if you're interested, you can go to cgspectrum.com and you can go and learn more. Sign up for a class. And like, if you don't understand, don't be discouraged. You know, just kind of what you can do is you can just kind of store away these little nuggets of knowledge, and then when you are ready, everything will make sense. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for today. I wanted to go over some of the dynamic stuff. I wanted to go over some of a little bit of everything, a lot of the new stuff in ZBrush 2021, because a lot of people have been asking about it. Yeah, let's go back to 1,000. See if that gives us, yeah. So I go up to 1,000. Like this is much stronger. It's keeping its integrity much more. So I can pull these up, and it's acting like I'm pulling a strand now because this is running like a little mini simulation every time I grab these things, which is pretty cool. So Maya understands since I have used it, but ZBrush I've never used, so I don't comprehend it. Yeah, that's normal. Like you're not born knowing how to do this stuff. No one is. What I would suggest though is don't get caught up on the tool and really learn the process. Like learn how polygons work, learn how shading works. Because once you do that, you can pretty much jump into any package and use anything at any time. So yeah, so went over some of the cloth stuff, some of the dynamic subdiv stuff. Let's go back to my. Oh no, that's my original guy. This is getting crazy. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so this is what we did today. We mostly focused, or almost completely focused on building these cables and doing this guy, this part, getting this part into a sane kind of realm. Yeah, it is part of the fun. Like learning new stuff it's hard, and this work is hard. Like if it wasn't hard, like literally everyone would do it. A lot of people want to try to do it, and they try and they're like, oh my god, this is too hard, I don't want to do it, and then they don't. So it takes a special type of crazy person to want to, you know, fiddle around with this stuff for day in and day out and day in and day out. But it is very, very rewarding because it is so hard, right? And things that are not hard are not rewarding. That's why people climb mountains and run marathons and, you know, lift hundreds of thousands of pounds or whatever. It's because not a lot of people can do it because it's super hard. Like it takes dedication, it takes hard work, and it takes practice. Like just like, you know, playing an instrument. Like it takes time. So give it the time it needs. Enjoy the process. As I keep saying, enjoy the process, enjoy the process, enjoy the process. So that's it for this week. Next week I'll come back. I'm gonna have hopefully I'll have all this stuff worked out, all this whole section worked out. And then we will work on these little plates up here and the brain and these little bits. And then we'll finally spit this out. Because he's still pretty light as he is. So I can probably spit this out into an external render, maybe Maya for Arnold, or maybe Houdini in Mantra, or I might even try to spit about maybe if I'm feeling froggy, might spit this out into Unreal Engine and see if I can get a real-time render out of this guy. So yeah, so if you like what you see and you have more questions, go to cgspectrum.com/3D modeling. You can always find me there. And I hope you all have a good weekend. I hope you learned a little bit today. If you didn't, I hope you're inspired today. Be kind to yourself, be safe, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Bye.